When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Meta Show. Today is Saturday, September 10th, 2022. We've got some big EVE news this week, and I couldn't think of anybody better to join me as co-host than one of the biggest EVE broadcasters in the history of EVE, the one man who probably knows more about broadcasting than me, Mr. Ithaca Hawk. Hello, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I think you've definitely overhyped me a little bit in the intro there.
Well, I got to hype you a little bit.
But I'll take it. I'll take all the credit I can have.
Exactly. So for those of you who are not aware, Ithaca, our dear friend Ithaca, lead host of the Alliance tournament, he will be joining us. When is the tournament again? October or November? When does it start? I know it runs through both months, right?
Start is a very loose term, and it can be. I can answer that question in 2 words. It depends. If you count the trials, the Minmatar Secession trials, then it starts in October. If you only count the main tournament on Tranquility, then it starts in November.
Very good. So we're going to start seeing your pretty face on the EVE-NT and the CCP channels in less than a month now, right? That's going to be exciting.
So everyone can get used to staring at me for far too long once again. It's a punishment that the EVE community have to deal with at least once a year at the moment.
And for those of you who are asking, yes, indeed. Unfortunately, I can't crop it all in this frame, but it does say verbal somatic material behind Ithaca. So he is the man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's just talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about this week. This week, big news. And this will be our top story. We'll get to it in a moment. CCP has announced, finally, what they had been promising us since, and I use promising in the loosest sense of the word, since they hate it when we say they promise things, since FanFest. And that is a significant expansion to EVE Online. They announced it with a video drop and a dev blog that provided some details, but not a whole ton of things we hadn't already heard before. But we got a name for it. And that name is EVE Uprising. They dropped a trailer, and just to make sure that we're all playing on the same page, I'm going to play that trailer for you guys in a moment. But for this week, the top story is the brand new EVE expansion. All right, Ithaca, here you go. You're not going to be able to see this, so if you want to watch it on your browser, you're not going to hear it through the microphone or anything. But here we go. This is the trailer. I will play it for you with only some maybe pauses and or editorial comments. And there it is. EVE Uprising coming in November. Now, I want to go back and I'm going to stop this in certain parts so I can highlight a couple of the things that I'm sure they want you to see. Okay. Now, first of all, when everybody starts asking, does this mean walking in stations because there's a person walking here? No. No, it does not mean walking in stations because a person is walking here. Let me refresh this because it's hanging up.
How many current EVE players even remember walking in stations?
Right? I mean, I know some of us do, but not a ton. I remember, I still have, I think, some screenshots from back in the day of what it was like when we had walking in stations. So obviously we have random chick coming out here. Here is like the internal of the new hangars. This is what that I think is. They're showing you guys the internal of the new hangars, which is nice. I apologize for this poor East Coast internet connection. It hasn't been great. Here you have, all right, so I'll pause it here. You can see on this Gila right here, there is what we've been wanting. Alliance and corporation skins. Finally, after all this time, we got it. We got our Alliance skins. It will be in the update. That is the heraldry portion of the update. So we'll keep tagging along and showing some more of what we have here. You can see here. So this section here, if you were at FanFest, I know this is stupid, but if you see all this crap, this is what they mean by the hangar update. They are changing the graphics of the hangars to make it a little more immersive. I know that's not exactly the most exciting thing in the history of EVE Online, but it's a nice thing to have, and it adds a little more ambiance, and maybe it'll turn into something later. Now, I will say the CSM has asked, if you're going to do a hangar graphical update, could you do a hangar update and maybe give us, say, hangar ACLs and some other things we've been asking for? But for now, we'll have to stick with the art part of it.
Yeah, that's
and
not
yes, I do say it's
team.
funny that we have cormorants. Go ahead, Ithaca.
So that's not part of the job of the art team. They just make things look amazing. As always, smash it continuously, day in, day out. It
is, and it's amazing. And I always laugh about, every time we have one of these trailers. Did you see? I'm sure you saw the Reddit post. Every time we have one of these trailers, and they say, "Oh, the art looks so great. This is awesome. Why didn't we get all this other stuff? Why are they spending all their time? Why are they spending time on instead of a hangar update? Why didn't we get blah 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 blah?" And it's just like, guys, our team doesn't program the game. They just do art cool stuff. Let the art guys do their thing. The big secret
is there's like 4 devs who make EVE and about 90 that do the art.
Bingo.
That's what they don't want you to know.
100%. Can you spin your super? That is a very good question. I sure as hell hope so, because what the hell's the point of them doing a hangar art update if we finally do not get Titans and super ship spinning like we've been begging for forever? So I will be very upset if we do not get that in there, and they better give us, I mean, it better be good. Anyway, well, I want to go through a couple more things just to highlight. So obviously, we're coming up to my favorite part of the trailer. I like the cormorants. There you see a 100 billion-esque of Horde fleet. Now, there was one thing here, and I'm going to pull an Ashtarothi, and I know you guys are going to laugh at me for this, but you see our lady friend from the Caldera here who is staring at this screen. Let me get the resolution a little bit better. I don't know why it jumped down here. But it's set up in the corner, Othelon 5, which is apparently the low-sex system and the planet, and you can see it in the background on the show that we are watching right now. The Meta Show background is live from this spot. It has turned into, all right, I'm going to get out of this because YouTube does not want to participate with me today. The name of the planet is on there. It was Othelon, I think, is 5, and it's. If you look here, I'll pull back the main screen. This is what is happening in that area space right now. You can see up in the upper left corner, right above my head here, there is what was a cloaked Edencom station that has somehow decloaked in the middle of this big crazy storm, and it's right off of this storm planet. And that apparently is going to be what is part of the main thing that's happening here in this faction warfare update. So To get back to the details of what's going on in this, let me pop back over to the others, to our other screen, and we'll walk through really briefly what's going on here with the update. So we have Battle Ready Capsuleers. The universe never stands still. EVE Online's first narrative arc has been building tension between the empires. Now the stage is set to bring about an intense, thrilling future in New Eden. They walk us through updates to faction warfare, a new suite of ships in addition to a plethora of balance changes to existing ships, corporation and alliance logos on your vessels as the introduction to heraldry, new visually immersive hangars, and more. They go down through, they show us this picture of a Kestrel. I don't know why, but it's moving around a lot, and that's kind of cool. So we'll see. They talk about many significant changes to factional warfare, and they talk about that in the State of the Union news item. We won't go over that because we talked about it before. You roll through, you look here, it talks about an overall expansion that aims to evolve faction warfare into a more intense and exciting combat playstyle for faction warfare enthusiasts. Ithaca, have you ever done any faction warfare stuff?
I have. I used to run a faction warfare alliance. What
do you think about this update so far that you have seen it as a faction warfare person in the past?
I don't know enough about it yet. This dev blog, while great at building hype, is an absolute masterclass in how to write a lot of information but convey very little data. There's almost nothing new that we don't already know. There's a nicer screenshot of the map system that's previously been teased with sort of dev screenshots before at FanFest and stuff. But if you follow the news and things like that, the goings on of CCP and EVE, and nothing in this dev blog is actually particularly new, just that it's now more concrete and more coming. I'm looking for the meaty dev blog, which I'm assuming will come at some point, which actually gives us information about how this whole system will work, the nuts and bolts, the cogs and the dials that make the whole war zone work. However, I am excited. The fact that it's getting such a major overhaul, and the devs involved in building it are pretty good, knowledgeable people. So I've got high hopes that they will come out with something. To be honest, I would rather they do it like a bit slower and get it right than just like rush out some half-baked feature, which we've seen in the past, like previous iterations of CCP, especially when we were doing the like how many of the releases we can get out every year. But at one point they were on almost like 10 or 12. And you would have these like half-baked features that weren't really finished, but they had to get out because they had to have something to release that time. I hope that they continue to take it slow and get it right, which it looks like that's their plan.
Now, I will say the one thing that I am a little bit frustrated about, and I've said this internally to them on the CSM, but in addition, I'll say it here now, but then I will go into the caveat as to why it may not be the biggest deal, or at least as big a deal as we seem to think it is. One of the things that they announced at FanFest, which I thought was critical to getting more people involved in faction warfare, was the whole idea of this allegiance system that would allow everyone in the game, regardless of whether they are in a faction warfare corporation or not, to pick a side and be able to engage in faction warfare within their current existing corporation, their current existing alliance, and still be able to do the new content and have an impact on the stories. And it says here, as you can say, this is only the beginning, which is a common thing that they like to say, because that means, well, we're going to iterate. There are even more exciting improvements following this expansion that will help open the gates even further to factional warfare in EVE, with a significant update that includes factional allegiance targeted for Q1 of 2023. This will allow players to aid a faction in faction warfare, regardless of corporation or alliance. Listen, this is frustrating, okay? Because I think everybody was hoping that this would be part of it, because the idea that they're doing a big factional warfare update, but much of the content is gate locked behind the fact that in order to participate in factional warfare, you need to be in a faction warfare militia, corporation that is part of one of the groups, and that means you got to leave your group that you're in now, and nobody wants to do that, or at least the most nullsec people, most highsec people, folks who are happy with the groups they're in, do not want to take their main characters out of the groups that they belong to for a long time and put them into a factional warfare group in order to participate, which is one of the reasons why faction warfare over the last couple of years has had numbers dropping the way that it has been dropping, because it's not easy for existing veteran players to get into unless they want to take that step. Granted, anybody can roll an alt, anybody can take an alt and put them in a faction warfare group and stay in their main area. But that's another account that you have to pay for, another character that you have to spend time working on. And some people just don't want to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why faction warfare has not seen the increase or the steady flow of people into it that it should have and would have if that wasn't such a big hang up. Now, at the same time, other things are bad too.
The cynical part of me thinks this is a decision in that by doing it this way, the first majority of people to play this, almost like playtesters, will be the existing faction warfare people, the people who know how the system works, who know and are engaged with the lore, rather than just opening the floodgates and potentially having a whole bunch of people coming in that don't necessarily understand the area as well. And they can see how they always talk these days about building things with levers and cogs to pull on to adjust and a lot easier. Used to be a lot of things were baked into the code, and if they had to change it, it involved a major rebalance. Whereas of recent years, they've been putting things in with like a spreadsheet somewhere that it pulls stats from that they can adjust on the fly. Part of me thinks that might be like an active decision to do that, almost like a soft launch.
And I can totally see that too. And I think at the same time, the folks that are in faction warfare, Arendis noted it in the chat, I think he's 100% correct. The folks that are in faction warfare right now probably don't want a huge flood of nullsec players or other veterans coming in and messing around in their sandbox before they've had a chance to play and figure out, how this new system is going to work and what the impact's going to be. So that makes sense. Now, I said all of that, and I want to caveat what I just said, because we've had a number of conversations with CCP over the last couple of weeks about what's going to be in the expansion and how this is going to work. And from my understanding, and this is not NDA, I'm not going to break any confidences here, but I will tell you what I understand based on the conversations that we have had. My understanding is that the vast majority of the new content that will be provided in this expansion, including the stuff for faction warfare, is going to be accessible to every player. Being in faction warfare will provide advantages that regular players won't have in rewards and things like that, as far as I can tell. But it's not going to stop us from being able to go and try out the content. We will get to play the new ships. We will go and be able to fight in the frontline systems. We can get PvP. We can enter the complexes or whatever they're going to do in those regards. We're going to be able to do all of that stuff. Now, it may not track. We may not track as well. We may not get as many benefits, or with like, we're not going to get ranks and stuff like I assume the faction warfare people will get by doing all this stuff, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to participate if we don't want to. So the adding of the allegiance system in first quarter 2023 will give us greater access to what is being proposed, what is going to be in the expansion, but it's not going to be the first time any of us get the access, as I understand it. Now, I was hoping our goal, I wanted to have CCP Swift on the show today to talk about this in more detail, and hopefully we can get him or one of the other developers that's working on the expansion on the show in the next couple of weeks, so we can talk to you guys with them and find out exactly what the details are. And I think that'll be critical, because, I mean, Ithaca, why would you want an expansion that half the people aren't going to be able to play, right? I mean, does that make any sense?
Yeah, but I mean, when have CCP ever really made sense, to be brutally honest?
So,
I'm excited for it, regardless.
I am too. I have to say, I'm excited for it too. Is there anything in particular that you're happy to see in this? Because I know I'll tell you what mine is after you go.
So I like the fact that they're just flat out rebalancing the entire system, because the system has been kind of broken for a while now. I said a bunch during my CSM campaign when I ran a Faction Warfare Alliance. It was some of the most fun I had in EVE Online in all the years I've been playing it. It was really good fun. And it was a real shame that it just kind of dropped off. Like, it was always that fantastic middle ground of people moving from being a new player into slightly more experienced players. Faction Warfare was a great avenue, and that just kind of stopped being there. So I'm really excited that they're putting effort into that and kind of recognizing that, and it's got so much potential. Until we see the meat of it, it's hard to know whether or not that potential will come to fruition. But so far, everything I see makes me have the sort of the copium that it's going to be there. I'm going to huff more copium until it happens.
I mean, that's about all we can do. Now, I have to say, Noisy Gamer and I think I are on the same page here, because he's in the chat and he's saying, oh, I thought the only thing good for me was going to be heraldry in this thing. And I'll be honest, that's the main thing that I care about in this expansion. Now, granted, is it much of an expansion if it's only like a couple of things like this? I don't know. You can argue one way or the other, whether you think this is a big expansion, whether you think this is the most content we've ever released, as was said by CCP Paragon before FanFest. Regardless of what you want to say, at least for me, this is a personal victory because of heraldry, because we have been begging and pleading for years, absolute years, trying to get them to give us corporation skins, alliance skins, Citadel structure skins, Citadel skins. Give us these things. We've been asking for them. We will throw money at you. And at the very least, they're finally doing it. And it's a month away. I'm gonna finally be able to run a ship with an Init logo on the side. Or on my alts, I can run one with a fat B on the side. I'm looking forward to that. That's a huge thing for me. And I think the way that they're doing
story on this.
No,
I think you might find really interesting.
I would love to hear it.
So when Ep30 was running the Alliance Open, which, if you remember, when they announced the Alliance tournament wasn't going to happen one year, Ep30 stepped up and we ran our own version called the Alliance Open, based on sort of similar rules, but it was on Thunderdome, and CCP were critical in helping us actually run that. I asked a number of times if, one, we could have the Alliance tournament name for it, but they said no, and two, if we could have prize ships for it, which they also said no. They said that they were going to do skins. So I wrote this little proposal in terms of the prize structure, and I was like, here's what you do. You tell the team that comes first, we're going to make a skin that'll apply to all the ships, and it'll be of your Alliance colors with like a gold stripe around it. Second place gets a silver one, third place gets a bronze one. Because if you remember when they introduced the skins and there was a bug and you could apply them to all the ships.
Right.
I was like, I know it works. How amazing would it have been if you had an Alliance tournament winner's skin that was in, say, Goonswarm Federation colors, like yellow and black, with a gold stripe around it that said Alliance Open Victors? That would have been hot shit. I would have loved that. It
would have been awesome. I think people would have loved it. I think there is zero chance that the Goons would ever win it, but I think it would be pretty awesome anyway.
Yeah.
You know, if we could get that, that would be great. But as Plexus says, that we'll never win. We can't even tackle. You know, and that's the thing. I tell these guys, and I've said this to CCP 1,000 times, and I don't think anybody really disagrees. More customization is better. People like to be able to customize things. They will spend time, they will spend money on customization. There are dozens of MMOs on the market who only fund themselves through customizations. In the chat, we've got folks talking about Albion Online, which I cannot play because the graphics are awful and they drive me crazy. But every bit of money they make from that game comes from customization. It's all monetization of basically cosmetic type stuff. So there are plenty of other games that have used that model effectively, and I think EVE is one of the ones that was on the cutting edge of this, kind of got a little ahead of themselves, got a little bit over their own skis, got smacked around during the Summer of Rage because of the view that the monetization they were doing was kind of scummy. But in the meantime, they've kind of pulled back on a lot of that stuff, and we get skins, which are great. Not everybody likes skins, though. But if you get the ability to customize like a skin that lets you fly the flag of the group that you're in a game that is so based on tribalism like EVE Online is, that's a huge selling point. And I think people are going to like it. Now, to the cynics out there, is anybody going to come back to the game because of Alliance skins? No. But I don't know, and this is a question I want to ask you, Ithaca. Everything you've seen in this expansion, is this going to bring people back? Do you think this is going to bring people back to EVE Online, or is this just going to be a nice to have for those of us who are still here?
I mean, heraldry will be a nice to have for the people who are here. The station interiors will be a nice to have. Faction warfare, done right, could be a massive draw. I know quite a few people who were heavily involved in faction warfare for many, many years, and when their gameplay stopped being fun because of a number of issues that people have talked about for years in faction warfare space, stopped playing and lament that. Same with wormholers, like wormholers who lost like certain types of content, lament that, and a lot of them will regularly tell you they will come back if that type of content was to come back or in an old or new form. So faction warfare update done right, yes, I think absolutely will bring people back.
That's a good sign. And I think we were making jokes. Hopefully EVE Uprising. The other thing we'll see Uprising is the PCU. That would be nice. Because the numbers have been down, and we've been talking about that on Meta Show for quite a while. I mean, right now it is Saturday afternoon. It's almost fall, starting to feel like fall. The leaves are changing around here. And we've got 21,000 people playing the game. That would have been 30,000 a couple of years ago.
It is also worth noting that on the EVE forum archives, you can go find it yourself if you want to. The first post about EVE dying came something like a month after it launched in 2003.
Pretty much.
Eve's been dying for 20 years now.
For a long time.
Yet it maintains its life like a cockroach.
And let's hope it will still maintain it, because I tell you, I think guys like me and Ithaca and many of you who are watching this stream, we put a lot of time in our lives into this game. We'd like to see it keep going. I would love to be able to hand off the reins of everything that I've built in this game to my kid someday, assuming that he wants to play this game.
That's a current sharing, Brisc, so that would be banned.
I can't do that. That's a ban. Shit. All right. Damn it. Well, maybe I'll get him to turn it into a NFT or something, and then they'll let me sell it. That would be fine. All right. So in addition, finally, we have, and the last thing we'll say about the expansion, other than some general thoughts, is they're giving us a timeline on what we're supposed to expect over the next 3 months. And this is nice, because the big issue, the big question a lot of people were asking was, okay, this expansion's in November. Is that it? Do we get nothing for 3 months? We've already had nothing for the last 4 or 5 months while you guys have been on vacation over the summer. Are we going to get nothing till then? So what they're telling us is September, by the end of September, we will get new ships that are uncovered through this arc of events that'll give us an edge on the battlefield. What ships? Well, we don't really know, other than what we saw from the leak that CCP Aurora showed, and it included some Navy faction vessels. That's all we really know. We don't know what they're going to be. We don't know which ships are going to have their Navy faction. They were discussed by ship type, destroyers, and a couple other things that I saw, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Do you remember which ones? It was Navy destroyers and something else. A couple other ones, I think.
Navy destroyers was the one I remember.
Right. And that's one I remember.
Because people were already asking about what the impact will be for the Alliance tournament, because they're expected to come out immediately as the Alliance tournament happens.
There you go. That'll be interesting to see if they get blocked or anything, or if they're super OP, which would be funny.
They have been banned already.
Immediately banned? They've already banned them? All right, yeah. Nice. There you go. All right. So you guys are already ahead of the curve. I like it. So October, they're doing more of this EVE Evolve stuff with significant enhancements to visual, audio, and UI. I assume that means they're going to be increasing or making some changes to the Photon UI. I know there's been a lot of discussion about that internally on the CSM. I know Jinx had posted something on Reddit asking for feedback about the Photon UI, because he doesn't like the 3 dots on the right-hand side. He prefers the hamburger menu on the left that used to be there. So he was asking for folks' feedback about that. I know that that's probably something they're going to start working on in more detail. I think a lot of people have already adopted Photon UI. I know I use it now just because I think it looks nicer. Have you used Photon at all, Ithaca?
I'll be honest, I didn't even know it was an option to use. I'm I'm an old man, so I still use the right click menu rather than the radial menu. So this photon thing is going to be, I'm going to feel like boomers when the Zoomers tell them what that Twitter thing is. I feel like that's going to be me.
There you go. Well, I would expect at some point, I think they're going to start doing what they normally do, which is look at adoption rates, and the things that have been most heavily adopted are probably going to be turned on automatically. Right now it's an opt-in beta, so you can go in your general settings, you can go in and click on it and opt in. I agree with Arendis. He's mentioned in the chat there's still a stupid amount of blank space. That is true. And I think there are still a lot of things where it doesn't exactly work. It doesn't, like, there are little overlapping areas of things where stuff works on the regular screen, but it hasn't gotten figured out. As I see those, I try to get people to put bug reports in. I try to put bug reports in so we can try to make it better. But I would expect they're going to be doing more of those changes coming in October. And I'll be honest, at CSM, we have not seen anything updated on the UI since the last time we had a discussion with the team. That was right before Photon went as an opt-in beta, and that was live on Tranquility. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do. And then finally, November, boom, they're going to drop this EVE Uprising with the heraldry and with the faction warfare updates and with the hangar updates and that stuff. So we're going to get little bits of it until November when the big thing hits. Now, again, to discuss this in more detail, or at least in a 30,000 foot level, is an expansion going to fix everything that's wrong with EVE right now? Only if that expansion rolls back everything that they did with industry and minerals for the last 2 years. Is that going to happen? No. So we're going to see things that we've been asking for, which is good, and I appreciate that. We've asked for new ships. We're going to get new ships. We've asked for Alliance and Corporation skins. We're going to get those things. We've asked for faction warfare updates. We're going to get those things. They're going to give us a couple of things that we didn't ask for because this is what CCP does. They're always doing their own thing. We're going to get the hangar updates and those types of things that are going to get added that we didn't ask for. But they're, again, as Ithaca said, they're nice to have. They're not need to haves. And I think if anything, what I'm hoping, and you can tell me if I'm full of shit on this, Ithaca, what I'm hoping is that by putting out a significant expansion that does have significant content changes in it, that does have new ships, it does have some of the stuff, it may go a little bit of the way to assuaging the player base that the company is not put EVE in maintenance mode and that we are still making significant investments. They're still making significant changes, and they are willing to provide new content.
I agree. So I've likened this, I've been saying this for a while now, I've likened this to turning a ship. You know, EVE's not a Formula One car that can turn on a dime and, you know, go round the corner and change direction super fast. It's a pretty big 20-year juggernaut of legacy. And when things change direction, it has inertia and it takes time to do that. Pretty much since FanFest, I felt that they were making moves to turn and move the game in a different direction, a direction with expansions again, with meaningful content updates. But that's not something that you can just snap your fingers and it happens immediately. It takes time, and this just says to me that this is part of that move to a different direction. And it's not going to be immediate payoff. It's going to take a bit of time. But I mean, I'm positive, really, for the future at this point.
And I have to say, you know, for me, I'm kind of in a watchful waiting position. Now, as a member of the CSM, I get to see a lot of this stuff ahead of time. And most of the time, I'm thinking about it, not just from my perspective as what do I think is cool, what do I think is good, but I'm also looking at it from the perspective of what are the people that I play with going to say when they see this. And unfortunately, and I think you can tell by the tone of the chat right now, the company has burned through almost every bit of goodwill that it's had, and I don't know what it's going to take to get any of that back. What I'm hoping,
steady progress.
Well, I mean,
it's
that's
going to
the
be
thing.
Slow and steady progress. That's it.
The only thing I can think of that'll even help is if they say they're going to do something and then they do it, and they do it in a way that it is well put out and that isn't completely filled with bugs and all kinds of stuff breaks. If the expansion comes out in November and it's flawless and it works, and the new ships are okay, and frankly, if the new ships are OP, I don't have a problem with that. I like it when they start ships off as OP because they can always dial it back a little bit. When a ship starts off being junk, nobody ever flies the thing. That's why we've seen, as far as I can tell, But Edencom, exactly. Nobody flies the fucking Edencom ships, but everybody flies the Triglavian ships. The Trick ships, they did great. The Edencom ships, not so much. And I think part of that was because they were afraid they were going to be too overpowering, and they made them weak. And even buffing them up a little bit didn't really do much. So I would prefer having them on the higher end.
The better part about them being overpowered at the start is there's that skills gap. So when new content, if you go back like a long time in Eve, new content would come out. Let's just say, carriers suddenly came into the game. The first people to train into them and start using them had a bit of an advantage. If you bring out a super overpowered ship, there's going to be groups that are like getting all their members into that, and that's going to be an advantage for them for a short period of time. And that's kind of fun in its own way. Like everyone trying to quickly train into these ships, it just makes me feel like back in the olden days of Eve when the doctrine changed. You're like, oh, crap, I need to add like 3 months to my skill queue now to be able to fly it. And then you get into that ship, and then the Alliance executive is like, right, we're changing now.
Exactly. Every time.
Yeah.
And but I will say this, I think unlike the past, one of the things that we do have the benefit of right now is, and I don't know about you, but I tend to bank all of the extra skill points that I randomly get, and they've been giving out skill points like they were nothing. So most of my characters have 1 million, 2 million. I think Brisc has 7 million like banked skill points that I just haven't used for anything. 7
or 8 million across my account.
So I just sit on them so that when these big announcements come through and we get these new ships, if there are new skills and new skill trees that you have to go down to get the ability to fly them, I can just dump them in and have them right away. That generally hasn't been a great thing because most of the time I trained in the Edencom stuff immediately, and I think I've flown them 3 times in 2 years. So now on the trick side, I have perfect trick skills because I love every single trick ship. They are amazing. And I was very pleased with how they did that update. Thank you, CCP Rise.
The Shacks Online and Wormholes was not the most fun thing.
Are you sure? Because it sounded like fun to me. I would love that. That would have been great.
What was fun was when you had to have 2 FC groups because, so what you would do is you would split your Leshaks and have 2 target callers and 2 Leshak groups focusing on different targets. And then like a single triage Archon with 3 capital reps could keep 1 Leshak under Leshak fire alive with 2 reps, but not with 1. So it had to swap. So if you were, pretty swish, then you would have maybe like a Dark Blood Apostle with 4 reppers, and then you could have 2 on each. And that was chaotic but fun. It was high skill, but then it became just oppressive, and everyone used them. That was the only option. That was the only problem with it.
That's kind of one of the problems in general. Like in terms of meta changes, sometimes the early adopter will get the benefit for a few weeks, but then as soon as you kill a couple of those and you get to see how they're fit, everybody's like, oh, let's try that. And then boom, you have a new meta, and now everybody's using it. But hopefully we will see at least some changes with these new ships. We'll see.
I think the dumbest thing that could possibly ever happen is something that I just saw someone say in chat, and that would be Navy Munins.
Oh, dear God, why? No.
I just never, please, CCP, just never do that.
Navy, anything but that. Dear Lord. Yeah. The last thing we need is more fucking Munins online. All right. We're done with the update. Again, we'll see how it goes out in November. And I think a lot of us are cautiously optimistic, but at the same time, we recognize that there's no silver bullet to fix the things that we perceive as being issues in the game. A lot of that's going to have to come down to us doing that ourselves. So we'll see how it goes. Eve Uprising launching in November 2022. Get your copy for free, I assume, because that's how they do it whenever they release the thing. So there we go. Now, next up, we're going to do the Nullsec Power Hour. I am excited because Ithaca is here, and not only is Ithaca like the AT guy, and he's probably been on more streams than me, and he's an awesome artist who does great work, and he's our favorite rocket scientist in real life, but he's also in Volta, and they're fighting with Brave and the gang up north against FRT, and I want to hear about it from him, especially all the fun we've seen in the last couple of weeks, because as far as I can tell, our poor Panda friends are not having a lot of fun on this content deployment that they did up against Brave. So here we're going to go into the Nullsec Power Hour to talk about the war in the north. Now, before we go into this, I would like to just chortle a little bit about this ping that Null sent out today, because as you can tell, in it, and our boy Shvo has been out murdering everything that he can get his hands on in fraternity space, to the point that now they're having to send out pings to try to tell their members to get their shit together because they need to stop dying. So Null says, and this is funny, to be bluntly honest. Since the Imperium announced their failed deployment versus Horde in the South, I had no idea we were fighting Horde in the South. I thought we were fighting fire. Horde showed up a week before we left, but now that was a deployment against Horde. Okay, all right. They're rekindling themselves by going hard with Kikimora fleets. If we want to kill 100 plus Kikimoras and protect our Rorquals, we need to do the following stuff. More people in standing fleet on a regular basis. For the last 4 Rorqual saves, standing noticed movements before the pings happen. Obviously, we don't have enough people in standing. Okay. If you can't be in standing, join the Rorqual save fleets. Okay. If you're a Rorq pilot, be on comms and have your Sinos ready, cloaked 130 kilometers from your Rorq. So basically, do the common sense shit you should have been doing before, which is why you keep dying, but you haven't been doing it. I appreciate the fact that he had to reiterate it. Scout for potential wormholes towards you prior to mining. So best case scenario, we get a fight 100 people with direct bridge rain within minutes. Worst case scenario, you will hear a disappointed sigh. Okay. This is just funny to me, and I appreciate it. And I think, if anything, the fact that Null had to send this out is a sign that Shvo's back to doing his dirty work, and I appreciate it. Have you guys killed a lot of their caps, Ithaca, up there?
I mean, that would require them to bring them in the first place, which they haven't really been doing. To be honest, Frat, fantastic at pinging. Lots of pings, lots of rage forming, very little commitment. That seems to be the problem thus far. The one time they've actually really, I would say they've gone all in was on the 5ZXX Fortizar, which, just backstory, we hadn't used that fort for nearly a year. We actually sold it to Brave when they moved into the area. They used it for a while. Then when they were set up, they gave it back to us because no one was using it. Frat decided to, that was it. That was the hill they were going to die on. And they committed to killing it. They fed like 120 billion-esque, and this took them all night in China time zone. It was 5-6 in the morning by the time they finished. So late that we genuinely think that one of their next pilots fell asleep because we bumped him off their fort and killed him. They just lost 115 billion to kill a Fortizar which no one was using.
There it is on the screen.
That's the only time they've committed.
They brought a ton of supers, but it's like, you look at these numbers, I have to say, Fraternity is, and I'll pull up Dotland here and show you guys, Fraternity is one of the top alliances in the game. They have tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of people. They are number 3 overall right now with 2,500 members. 25,000 members, excuse me.
That's a lot of bots.
That's a lot of bots. That's a lot of everything. And the fact that they are getting basically dumpstered by Brave, who has slimmed down considerably since they started kicking inactives, is pretty impressive. As well as throwing in We Form Blob and the Volta Boys. Now, you guys are not humongous in terms of size, but you punch way above your weight.
Yeah. So whenever they set timers against us in EU time zone and actually try and fight, it's just a complete and utter floor wiping. They have tried a number of times to contest us in EU time zone, and it's just never gone in their favor. They have alarm clock pinged for a couple of things over the months, but they haven't really committed apart from that 5ZXX one. The Keepstar that fight recently, I use fight in the loosest of possible terms. They reinforced the Keepstar. That was because they max formed for a timer we created and then didn't commit because they felt they couldn't win. So they took their already formed fleet and went and hit the shield timer on the Brave Keepstar. We formed to defend it, of course, and they, quote, max form, end quote, and then didn't come in. So they went around and reinforced a bunch of structures instead of taking the armor timer. Since then, they've pretty much done nothing else. Because we max formed, we then took our already formed fleet and went and reinforced a bunch of stuff in their space, including made a fight earlier on today, actually, in Branch with Nightmares. And, EU time zone frat is just, a joke, really, to be pretty honest.
Well, and I think that's kind of the thing. It's funny that, when they go fight these groups that are not the same time zone as them, they dominate in AU and China time zone, and then the rest of the time they're kind of just there. And you can't constantly demand that your guy's alarm clock every frickin' day for these big fights. So they get to some of these big pushes, and then of course, you get the complaints, oh, everybody's going to bat phone. And I saw the poor Brave guys apparently are getting accused of, we paid a lot for our bat phones. And it's funny because, this is the standard line that a lot of these guys throw around. There's Brave, the little Brave logo in there. I don't think Brave has to bat phone anybody. They have the people that they're with. And if you look at some of these fights, like, for example, there was one today. This was today, earlier today, in Branch. Volta and Brave and the guys were able to go in and kill an Astra House and an Athenor in fraternity space. 15 billion.
That's frat EU. That's frat EU. Right. Look at the numbers. Like, exactly. Volta and Blob are outnumbered there by a relatively large amount. But frat's EU contingent has always been relatively weak, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Like, Volta is an experienced group of experienced people, and good FCs, great tactics and things like that. And Blob give us the numbers to punch up, whereas Frats don't have that kind of FC experience. You see this; they're merking FCs in, so they have guys from like Skill U and Deepwater, for example, coming into FC for them in some of the big fights, because it just feels like they don't really trust their own FCs as much. And they rely purely on numbers, the whole Zerg rush type thing. And that works in some instances. But when you're only at 220 to 160, that's not an overwhelming numbers difference. It's not going to work.
And so I think, you're seeing this up here. And that's one of the things we've heard a lot in EVE over the last couple of years. And that is, oh, this is just an N+1 game in nullsec. Whoever wins is whoever brings the most people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we've had two pretty massive examples of where that's not true. And I think the first one is, if you look at the results of the Vietnam War, it took 2/3 of the game to push Goons and the rest of the Imperium into one constellation in Delve, but it wasn't enough to break them to the point that they lost the war. And the result was they won the war. Now you're looking and you can see Fraternity here. They have an overwhelming numbers advantage over top of Volta and Blob and the rest of the Braver Trash Coalition, which I think is a hilarious name, by the way. Having those guys out there combined, they still don't have anything close to the numbers of Fraternity. Fraternity can still call on its pappy allies in NCPL and in Pandemic Horde if they need them to bolster the numbers in the time zones that they're bad in, and they have not hesitated to use that when they wanted to.
I'm sure tests for pilots will really make the difference.
Well, exactly. And then you've got, of course, the last 3 members of tests that are out there that are still PvPing. And the result is the Volta guys and Brave are still winning because they've found a way to fight smarter, and they found a way to contest these guys and deal with their numbers advantage. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, a lot of it is time zone tanking. But the reality is
this battle report, I actually misspoke. This is in China time zone. This was in their prime.
This was in their prime, and you guys still beat them, which is, it's like, come on. And now, granted, this is in branch, and a lot of these guys
in their
are
space.
Right. I mean, this is their home space. Not all of these guys, some of these guys are deployed. They may not be available to jump back. They may not have alts to do that. They may not even want to. But the reality is, if you're going to let your stuff get pushed in the background, okay. You know, that's one of the ways that smaller groups are able to harass the larger groups. It's like bear baiting. You get 5 or 6 dogs going after a bear. The bear can only move around a little bit. He's too big. And then you got a bunch of the dogs going at you. They're smaller, but they're more nimble. And they can go around your butt and bite you when you're not paying attention. And that's what a lot of these small groups do. And that's one of the things that I think I was always a little disappointed. Well, I shouldn't say disappointed because it wasn't bad. But some of these big groups don't need to be so big when they're fighting these wars. They can split off a SIG or 2 and have those guys go do other things and put pressure from more than one direction. And that's what we ended up trying to do during Vietnam, with Init going off and deploying to fight in East Terry and going and fighting in Ketch and other places, while goons were doing their defense in Delve. And it had an impact because we were hitting them on the soft underbelly that wasn't being protected. And that's what you guys are doing here. At least that's what happened today. And I think that's a good way for smaller groups to kind of piss off the big guys, because if you do this enough, they're going to say, why are we deployed to mess with these guys in their space when they're messing with ours? Let's go home and fix it. Literally what the Imperium just did 2 weeks ago when we ended our deployment against Fire and Horde and said, we're going to go back home. And what has happened since then? Our Keepstar and ZMVV died. Our Keepstar and GE-TAC is probably going to die. Ketch is being seeded. We're losing 2 regions that we've had for a while. We'll see what happens in terms of where things go from here. But the reality is, when the big guys say we're tired and we're going to go home and take a break, that's when there's an opportunity for the little guys. And I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see Fraternity and those guys start saying pretty soon they're going to undeploy out of pure blind because they're done.
Norris has been picking a whole bunch about it being a marathon, but it must be the worst marathon I've ever seen. It's like you run 1 mile and then get punched in the face. It's really hard to get people to keep wanting to run through all that. But they just aren't, when they have the numbers, they aren't going all in. The only time they did it was for that completely useless Fortizar, and they killed it. Like, they did kill the objective, but they lost so much in the process, and it was such a completely useless objective that none of us understand why they actually went in for that particular one. If they decided to go all in on that Brave Keepstar, I'm certain they could have pushed it to Hull Timer, and then if it gets to Hull Timer, they could probably kill it. They would lose a lot of stuff, but they would win the objective. But they're just not committing to it at this point in time. They're doing that whole, we don't commit until we can guarantee that we can dumpster you, which has plagued EVE groups for a long, long time. In my opinion, it was one of the downfalls of XIX in the drone lands when Volta and Skill Yourself fought them. They jumped in to try and reinforce our staging fort a couple of times. They got the shield timer. They jumped in their super fleet. We had maybe like 4 Titans, 10 supers, and they were afraid of losing something, so they went away. They reinforced it again. They came back in. We had maybe like 10 Titans and 20 supers, and they were more afraid of losing a Titan, so they didn't commit. Then the third time, we matched them on super and Titan numbers, and then that was when it started to all just cascade into killing Keepstars. And I just see shades of that right now with Fraternity. Honestly, I kind of want them to commit a bit harder and actually feed some stuff to kill some strategic objectives. That will make things interesting again, because to be honest, it's not that interesting right now. If I'm brutally honest, it could be, but no, I just not don't believe that Frat really have it in them at the moment.
Well, and I think that's a question that a lot of folks are asking. Is there anything happening right now that is of significant interest or importance to these big groups that they're willing to throw the big toys around and potentially lose them? And I don't know if there is. And I think that's a real big problem. Like, you look at the last couple of fights, the last big Titan fight obviously was M2. We've had a couple of small skirmishes since then, but nothing of that scale. And we probably won't see anything of that scale until the next great war that encompasses the entire server. But the only reason that fight happened was because both sides felt they could win, and the Imperium knew they had to make a stand somewhere. They were telling everybody, we will make a stand somewhere. And that was the best opportunity that they had. And on the other side, of the Pappy side, they knew that at some point they had to do what they had to bring the big toys in. They couldn't just expect to be able to win this war without having a big Titan super fight. So it was inevitable. And then boom, that's what happens. You catch both sides where they think they've got a chance to win. Both sides commit. One side wins, the other doesn't. And unfortunately, I think a lot of what happened there, coupled with the way that CCP changed the game, resulted in a lot of people not really wanting to be the guy that pulls the trigger anymore. You know? So I don't think anybody wants to be the next Villy to be able to say, all right, yeah, I was the one that made the final call that resulted in the worst loss of Titans in the history of the game or something like that. Nobody wants to be that guy. And so nobody wants to be in the position to make the choice that where they could be that guy.
I don't know if I 100% agree with you in that, because I mean, I have a Titan, right? And if I never use it, do I really have a Titan? Like, what's the point?
No, I agree.
Like, I would 100% rather be alongside the next village, jumping into something that potentially means that my Titan is going to just eat shit and die, and maybe we lose the fight in the end. Who cares? But at least my commitment and my Titan have value and have use to it. Right now, logged off in a keep start with the subscription about to expire because I'm not using it, there's not very much point. So if Frat were to commit, I would be willing to put my Titan on the line to fight them with it. To be personally, I agree. Look, not everyone agrees with that, but
no, but I agree. Look, I agree with you 100% in that regard. Look, I've lost 2 Titans. Okay, I've never had a problem throwing my dick on the table if I wanted to. So it's at the end of the day, I think the problem is there's a disconnect between leadership and the line members. Line members typically, and it's funny because you'll be in a fleet and the FC will be like, hey, we're outnumbered. You guys want to take this fight or not? And everybody's like, yeah, let's do it. And we all go and we die and everybody has a fine time. But then that FC has to go and explain why he did what he did. And and the leadership, alliance leadership doesn't always like it when they got to SRP a bunch of stuff. So I think that's unfortunately part of the problem when you have the people that are like the bean counters and the ones that have to figure out how they're going to do certain things, making the calls, then it's less likely that the calls get made. I think the line members are always going to be bloodthirsty. The FCs, to a certain extent, some of them don't want to be the one that makes the mistake. Some of them do. Some people have a greater tolerance for risk than others do. And at the end of the day, it all comes out to, who makes the final call. And hopefully, normally it's the same person. I mean, one person makes the call. If it's one of these committees or a council of wardens or any that kind of bullshit, it tends to break down. And I think you saw that with them too, the finger pointing after the fact.
What was the Imperium one that they tried to impose in Losec? The Viceroy?
The Viceroys, system? Yeah. I mean, that just that's the thing. One thing
Dead on arrival, that one.
You need dictators because you need autocrats because this game does not work as a democracy. Is if there's a way to point fingers at somebody or throw a risk around or something like that, we're going to find a way to do it. So in any event, the war in the North continues. Fraternity is getting smacked around. Poor Norhouse is losing Rorquals and stuff that are being moved to high sec and killed as botters. And then, of course,
he was spotted dropping forts in Brave Space with that character. So it's definitely him, just in case anyone has any doubts. That is 100% his ult that got yoinked out to Uli and got skadunked.
So apparently he doesn't care. Well, I mean, granted, this is a guy that's had his accounts banned multiple times and he can't play on Norhouse anymore.
Didn't want that Oracle anyway.
Right. Didn't need that Oracle anyway. So anyway, they're going to keep doing what they're doing. It doesn't matter to him because he's got enough characters. He can do this till they shut the servers down, apparently. But in the end, I think Fraternity is going to figure out pretty soon that this war is not something that they really care about, and they're going to go do something else. We'll see how long it takes. But I'm glad that you were here to give us the first-hand line number. It's always
hard, I think, for the aggressors to motivate their members when there's no real reason, because their initial reason to go to war was pretty paper thin in the first place. Like, if I remember, it got posted on Reddit and everyone kind of mocked it because it was pretty ludicrous about how Volta continues to like, oh, we're best friends with Initiative. You guys are always coming to our aid and stuff like that, and that's why we have to be purged, because we're just an extension of Gunsworm Federation,
right?
Which was news to me.
News to me as well.
Yeah. So I guess when you're just like, when you spend all day on the Spin Master 3000, eventually your legs get tired, and I think that's kind of the stage that they're getting to right now.
Pretty much. And I think, you know, when it comes down, like the guys are asking in the chat, why hasn't CCP banned him from everything? Here's the thing. They could ban him from everything. He can still play the game. You know, he's an alliance leader. He does as much stuff in Discords and on forums and in private conversations as he would do in the client. So he could still run Fraternity without ever logging in the game. I mean, that was a criticism many people had when he was in charge. Huh?
He brings a lot of content to the game.
Right.
Like people like him.
And he spends a lot of money.
Yep. I mean, people like him who bring a lot of content, drive a lot of people, and make waves in the meta of the game are important to the health of the game. And you know, I hope that people like him don't leave the game, and I hope that there's more people like him. You know, people like Villy and Progod and Mitani and Norris and stuff, they're all doing things that are part of the great story of EVE Online, and it's important. And as much as I enjoy, as a line member of Volta, dumpstering his people on a regular basis, I hope it doesn't change. I hope he stays.
I agree.
I hope he just stops breaking the rules.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the nicest thing. Just stop breaking the law. Stop breaking the rules. You know, play the game the way it's supposed to play. And there's no reason why you couldn't do that if you wanted to. But I don't think we're ever going to get to a position where the average player of EVE doesn't consider Fraternity to be full of botting. And that's a shame. It's a shame. I
mean, well, stereotypes exist for a reason sometimes.
That is true. All right. We're going to wrap up real quick here. We're a little over time, but unlike CCP, we always provide you with more content than you are here for. This is an hour-long show. We're going to go a little bit later because I want to give Ithaca a chance to talk a little bit about his favorite thing, the Alliance Tournament. So give us a rundown. I mean, I know that recently, and I say recently, it was a month ago now, the rule set for the Alliance Tournament came out. So can you walk us through a couple of the things we're going to see when the AT starts next month, and what you want us to pay attention to, what you think is important? So
the rules are a bit changed from last year, not catastrophically so. It's not complete up on its head. The last year was sponsored by Mordu's Legion, so the points discount was on Mordu's Legion ships, things like the Garmer, the Orthrus, and the Barghest, for example, which is why they were super popular. This year it is on the Mimitar ships, so the fleet ships are all down pointed. You have a bunch of teams being invited from previous Alliance Tournament and also from the Anger Games, brought to you by Sothrasil. And the rest of them are either from the silent auction, which all goes towards the prize pool. And then there's a Mimitar Trials Tournament. So it's pretty catastrophic looking at the list. There's 7 places and something like, I can't remember off the top of my head, but like 28 teams or something have to come through for those, and it's a complicated format, but basically one team from each group will come through. So it's going to be a one and done. Like if you lose, you're out of the Alliance Tournament.
Wow.
Trials. It's going to be pretty brutal. Obviously, the prize ships are going to be the Freki and the Mimir, which are old Alliance Tournament prize ships. They're coming back round again. They're going to be rebalanced. The Mimir was long mocked as being one of the worst Alliance Tournament ships of all time, for a good reason, because it was. But they're going to rebalance it, they say. You can bring up to 4 of every hull, and it is being run broadcast-wise, once again, by EVE-NT. So that's the same group that produced Alliance Tournament 16, the Alliance Open, the Alliance Tournament 17, all the EVE-NT series, the Kadari Corporation Cup at FanFest, and a whole bunch of other things. And we're running it from our studio in Nottingham in the UK. We've already had a bunch of people apply for casters, of which we've selected our final people now, so that we're flying in a bunch of desk people and having a bunch of remote casters. I'm super looking forward to it. I think it's going to be amazing. The actual tournament itself is in November, I think the 2nd and 3rd weekend of November. And there's a whole bunch of amazing teams.
I will say I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. I think one of the things that Eve needs and has to have in order for us to be considered a legitimate, like, high-end MMO is some kind of esports, and having the AT around, having the other non-AT tournaments, the Anger Games, Eve Open when they do it, different things like that, having those available is pretty important. And I'm looking forward to it again. I always like to cheer on my Init friends, my Init colleagues, my Goon friends who are out there, and then my friends in other groups that are out. I mean, obviously, I'll be rooting for you guys in SFC to take it all, beat Vidra and Hydra, get you guys out there and have a good time, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. And I think it's fun because it gives people a chance to go and watch Eve and root like a sports team, and it's not something in game where we have to hate each other about it. It's kind of cool. So I'm looking forward to finally getting the next Eve AT, and then I can't wait to see what the skins look like, and I can't wait to see the ships out there. And I hope that the winning teams are willing to take those ships out and lose them to Fred Von Hole every week, because I find
it's worth mentioning as well. As of last Lions tournament, so I pushed for this for a couple of years, and I'm very happy it's finally happened. It used to be that only the top 4 teams would get prize ships, with the 4th place team getting like 1 of each. Now it's down to 10th place. So the number of AT prize ships goes up massively, and the number of teams that get them goes up massively. I mean, it's a 32-team tournament, so getting to the sort of top 10 position isn't out of the reach of, mid-tier teams. That's quite achievable. It used to be getting to top 4, you had to be a good team, especially in 64-team tournaments. That was difficult. NC perfected getting 4th for many years, but now obviously new teams coming in, lots of opportunities. Like, get 10th, you get AT ships. That's pretty cool.
I like it. And maybe someday I can join an AT team and use the Brisc tank to full effect to die first and help my team win. Maybe.
Mittens did that in
I remember, it was hilarious.
Yep, and he was in a polarized Augur Navy, and it was superb.
Everybody assumed he would be the worst person to shoot at because he's going to be totally brick tanked, and in fact he wasn't. He was a glass cannon. It was pretty awesome. That helped them win that match.
Superb. 10 out of 10. Would watch again.
Absolutely legit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of the show this week. This was the Meta Show for September the 10th, 2022. Ithaca Hawk, thank you for joining me this week. It was great to talk to you as we've been rolling co-hosts in the big chair here since the Matani stepped down. So thanks for coming on the show. I very much appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
We'll definitely have you back because you're one of my favorite guests. And for all of you who have been watching, we have a couple of shows we got planned in the next couple of weeks. Stick around. There shouldn't be any vacations anytime soon. So we will be here. It is the fall. We're getting ready for some fun times in Eve. It's a little bit of a break time. I think everybody is kind of figuring out what's going to happen next. But we will make sure we're here for you guys every Saturday on the Meta Show. I'm Brisc Rubal alongside Ithaca Hawk. Thank you all for watching this week, and you stay classy, New Eden.